You ever stop and think about this? It's one of those questions that sounds like a riddle, right? If every single country on the planet is in debt, who exactly did they all borrow from? Some secret cabal? Aliens? Well, the real answer is a lot weirder, and it gets to the very heart of how our modern world actually functions. All right, so let's really dig into this question. To unravel this paradox, we first have to get our heads around the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the system we're even talking about. This invisible architecture holding up the entire global economy.
Wow. Just look at that number. $315 trillion. That's the total amount of global debt. To put that in perspective, that is almost 3 times the value of everything produced on the entire planet in a year. Every government, every corporation, every war, every crisis, it's all built on this staggering mountain of IOUs. And that quote right there, that's the key. That's the mental flip we have to make to understand any of this. We're all taught to think of debt as a problem, something to get rid of. But what if that's completely wrong? What if debt is the system? Let's investigate.
Okay, so if we want to find the world's creditor, it makes sense to start with the biggest player in the game, right? And that means looking at the world's biggest debtor, the United States. Its debt isn't just a national issue, it shapes the entire globe.
$38 trillion. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a truly astronomical, historic number. So the big question is, who are they writing the checks to? Well, the answer is probably not who you think it is.
You know, you always hear that the US owes all this money to other countries, especially China, and yeah, that's part of it for sure, but look at this chart. It's not even close to the whole story. A full two-thirds of America's debt is actually owned by Americans. It's sitting in your pension fund, in bank vaults, and even held by the Federal Reserve itself.
This circular mirror idea is perfect for explaining this. Think about it. The US government needs cash, so it issues an IOU, that's a bond. American companies and pension funds buy that bond. Then, American taxpayers pay the interest on that bond, which flows right back into those same American companies and pension funds. It's like the country is borrowing from its future self.
And this isn't just an American thing. Oh no, the whole world is playing this game. It's like a giant planetary game of hot potato. Japan holds US debt, the US holds European debt, Europe holds debt from developing nations, who then use their reserves to buy US debt. Everybody is holding everybody else's IOU. The whole thing only works because everyone keeps playing.
So you're probably thinking, this is insane. If everyone owes everyone, how does this not just collapse? Well, this is where we get to the real mind-bending secret of modern finance. The debt, it's not meant to be repaid, ever.
Okay, this is super important. When you take out a car loan or a mortgage, you have to pay it all back, right? The original amount, the interest, the whole shebang. Governments, they don't do that. When a big payment is due, they just take out a new loan to pay off the old one. It's called rolling over the debt. It's less like a loan and more like a Netflix subscription that just never, ever ends. All that really matters is making the yearly interest payments.
So why on earth would anyone agree to a loan that never gets paid back? Simple. Because a government bond isn't really seen as a loan in the way we think about it. For big-time investors, pension funds, even other countries, a U.S. government bond is the single safest place to park your money on planet Earth. It's not a liability. It's the ultimate asset. It's the bedrock of the whole system. This shark analogy is perfect. The system has to keep moving, has to keep issuing new debt to stay alive. Those interest payments, that's kind of like the rent the world pays for financial stability. And here's the wildest part. If every country suddenly became debt-free tomorrow, it wouldn't be a celebration. It would be an absolute catastrophe. The system would literally implode because its safest asset would have just vanished into thin air.
And you might think this is all some new, crazy invention, but it's not. This system was actually born out of war. Go all the way back to 1694. England is broke and desperate for money to fight France. So they come up with this brilliant new idea, the government bond. And it works so well, it's like a financial superpower. Suddenly, the ability to borrow became more powerful than having the biggest army. And what started as a way to pay for cannons has now become the very engine of the entire global economy.
So, this whole massive, complicated system, it all balances on one tiny, invisible thing. But what happens when that ingredient, that trust, starts to run out? What happens when the promise gets broken?
Because that's when things get very real, very fast. When belief fades, all those trillions of dollars on a screen don't matter anymore.
The game of rolling over debt comes to a screeching halt, and all of a sudden, those anonymous creditors, they aren't anonymous anymore. They come knocking. I mean, just look at Greece back in 2010. Investors panicked, and suddenly the country couldn't borrow another cent. The rescue that came from the outside, it had a brutal price tag: austerity. That meant deep cuts to pensions, to hospitals, to public services. For an entire generation of people, bailout just meant pain.
Or you can look at Argentina. They've been trapped in this cycle again and again and again. They borrow, they boom, they bust, and then they default. For them, this global system of debt hasn't been a tool for stability. It's been a national curse that has strangled their economy for decades.
And if you want to see the absolute worst-case scenario, look at Sri Lanka. They literally ran out of money to pay the interest on their loans. The result? No fuel, no food, riots in the streets, and the total collapse of the government. That's the real human cost when this system breaks.
And that quote just nails it, doesn't it? People can vote for their leaders, that's democracy. But when a crisis hits, it's the financial markets, the faceless bondholders, the credit rating agencies. They are the ones who decide if a country gets to survive. That's a terrifying amount of power.
All right, so let's circle all the way back to where we started. We've seen how countries owe money to each other and how they mostly owe it to themselves. But that still doesn't feel like the whole answer, does it? Who or what is the real creditor here? Who's at the very top of this food chain?
And here it is, the big reveal. The real creditor isn't a nation. It's not some shadowy global bank. The one thing the entire world is in debt to is an idea. It's confidence. It's belief. That's it. This entire $315 trillion house of cards is built on the simple, shared belief that the checks won't bounce. As long as we all believe, the game goes on.
But hang on. If it's all about confidence, we have to ask who benefits the most from keeping that confidence high. Because when we say a country owes money to itself, that's a bit misleading. The reality is ordinary taxpayers fund those interest payments through their taxes. And where does that money go? It flows upward to the banks, the corporations, and the wealthy investors who actually own all those bonds. It's a slow, steady, and massive transfer of wealth from the bottom to the very top.
So is it really a coincidence that as global debt has exploded, so has global inequality? They're not two separate things happening at the same time. They are perfectly, fundamentally connected. You could even say they are two sides of the very same coin. The system is basically designed to concentrate wealth.
And so that leaves us right here, with a global system built entirely on belief. A delicate balance that relies on never, ever tipping over. A long, long time ago, debt meant you were a slave. Today, we're told it means the system is stable. But you have to wonder, if that collective confidence ever truly breaks, we might all be reminded what this really is. One giant promise. And maybe, just maybe, it's a promise that can't be kept forever.